under the new legislation that the Home Secretary has just mentioned, we should be detaining everybody that's arrived in an unregulated manner. Obviously, we can't do that because we don't have the detention space. So the next best thing is to tag these people. I mean, after all, Patrick, if they don't want to be tagged, they don't have to come here.
Mm. OK, all right, well, that's a starting point for us. I'll throw it over to you now, Paul. Do you think it's ethical that Channel migrants could be electronically tagged?
Well, I mean, first of all, Suella Braverman in that interview didn't actually answer the question that she was asked, perhaps not unsurprising for a politician, about whether under the new legislation there would be an ability to impose a tag, because in terms of how we deal with tags at the moment under the law, we impose them as a condition of bail. That is something that's decided on by a court, having heard lawyers' submissions in relation to whether the imposition of the tag is appropriate. And indeed, it's seen as a direct alternative to where the court might be considering in remanding the defendant or the accused in custody. So it's seen as a very draconian measure as it's currently used. We're talking about people who have not been charged with, because that's the circumstances under which we use tags at the moment, any criminal offence. And that's why imposing or insisting on a tag clearly is wrong. I mean, there is another technological question, which is I'm not sure that these tags do what it seems to be assumed they do in terms of keeping a monitor on where people are, because as I understand it, they send a message if somebody moves or somebody tampers with it, rather than actually acting as a sort of GPS tracker on where they are.
I'll come back to you, Paul. I'll come back to you, Paul. I'll lob it back over to you, Kevin. I can't help but wonder if people who are dead against tagging people who we don't know who they are a lot of the time, we don't know necessarily where they've come from, we do know that there's a fair number of them absconding and certainly not necessarily wanting to go through the asylum system as well. I think tagging is just it's not that much of an infringement, is it? It's just like wearing a bracelet.
Well, indeed, it's there's a lot of fuss about nothing, quite honestly. We could detain them if we had the detention space. We would detain them, but we don't have the detention space. Unfortunately, we've only got about 2,500 places in detention, so we've got to go to the next best thing, and we grant them immigration bail, and then we tag them. It really isn't a problem, Patrick. We've got to know where these people are. The only issue that I can see is, do we have enough tags for all the people that are coming across?
Well, that is quite a big problem, actually, because potentially we don't have enough tags. I think we've had 19,000 and a few arrivals so far this year. Supposedly, we've got 25,000 tags in the country, and a load of them are already on people. So I'm not quite sure exactly how we're going to do that. But in this hypothetical world that we are now living in, Paul, do you think that this is just another thing for a lot of human rights people to get involved with, where in reality maybe all they want is open borders? I mean, we can't put them on a barge, we can't put them on an Air Force base, we can't seem to deport anyone now, we can't tag them.
Well, I can only speak for human rights lawyers, and I wouldn't say that the view of the human rights lawyers, certainly not my view, is that there should be open borders. But what is important is that anything that is imposed in a proportionate way that respects the human rights of the individual concerned. And it does not matter whether that person is a citizen of this country or not. And that's why I don't agree that this is not a problem. This needs to be looked at properly. And as I say, in the eyes of the law, as it currently is, imposing a tag on somebody is effectively similar to putting somebody into custody, and it has to be only done with the order of a court. and that standard has to remain. We can't create a situation where essentially we're dealing or we're treating the people coming in a different way to the way that we would treat someone accused of a crime in this country.
It's interesting, though, that, Paul. I'll just stick with you on this for a second, because, again, I mean, there will be a group of people who think that if you have entered a country via a small boat and you are not necessarily being forthcoming about saying who you are or what your intentions are, and we don't know whether or not you've committed a crime in a country on your way over here, etc., 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 that does warrant you being treated a bit differently from, you know, me, you, or Kevin. If we committed a crime and we went to court and they said, we're going to bail you but wear this tag or whatever, I would have thought maybe you could treat people a bit differently if they've just rocked up here on a boat, no?
Well, fine, arrest them, charge them with an offence and treat them as somebody that's on bail, as you've just described, Patrick. But that's not what we do. We don't arrest them and charge them with criminal offences. Perhaps that's something that we should do, but we don't. And therefore, it is a huge imposition, and it's frankly wrong to then attach a tag to them without a proper consideration by a court as to whether that's right. I mean, you know, in a way, that's why it's so disappointing that Suella Braverman would not answer that question. Because if that's what the government wants to do, fine, put it into legislation, have a process by which those who make these decisions go through in order to decide whether or not a tag should be attached to somebody. And she hasn't answered that question. She's just given this sort of very nebulous explanation about what they're passing.
I think she might have been burnt a little bit by relentlessly trying to impose things, none of which are actually really happening at the minute, with these RAF bases and the barge, etc. I think she probably doesn't want to nail her colours to the mast of anything else, because there's going to be a fear that that isn't going to work either. And then at some point, well, good grief, who knows what happens. But Kevin, I will put that point to you then. That, would it actually be a deterrent at all? Because look, the barge, it's not necessarily a deterrent. Rwanda, no planes have taken off at the moment at all. So would the idea of being ankle tagged be a deterrent? I suppose it will be a deterrent for people looking to abscond.
Yeah, if you're looking at people that want to just disappear into the unregulated economy, it is a deterrent.
Okay.
Because they won't be able to. And that's what the government are concerned, because too many.
I'm going to cut across you there, Kevin, I'm afraid. Sorry about this, but you sound like a robot, so I'm going to have to just try and get that sorted. I'll go back to Paul there. Paul, what other ways can we stop these people absconding, do you think, seriously? I mean, if they are doing it and it is happening, I mean, we have to try to find a way of them not absconding, and we can't just lock them in their rooms, because then with respect, people like you would say that's against their human rights.
So you want me to do something or advise on something that Suella Braverman seems to be incapable of dealing with? Well, I'll do my best. Look, if you want to do something which is a deterrent, it needs to be capable of having a deterrent effect, and part of that is that it gets communicated in the right way, in an effective way, to those who are going to, or stop the people who are doing the thing that you're trying to deter, to act as a deterrent. That's why I always did wonder why putting people on planes to Rwanda was really seen as a deterrent, because the message has got to go out there in a way that is going to put the people who take these terrible journeys off. I suspect that there isn't a deterrent that will stop someone who, let's face it, has gone through an appalling journey just to get to Calais, let alone what on earth is going to happen to them when they get on one of these inflatable boats and try and get across the channel. And that's really, I suspect, you rightly said, I mean, Suella Braverman has had her fingers burnt because she's
do you accept, though, that we do have an issue with people absconding?
Well, I'm going to defer to your other guest on that, because he's far more experienced in this area than I am. I mean, I heard on your news headline that it was thousands of Albanians had absconded. I mean, absconding has always been an issue with those who come into the country and then make applications to remain. That's been a problem that's been around for decades.
Okay.
I don't know whether it's any worse now than it was. I'll defer to superior.
All right, well, Kevin, I believe we might have you back now, so we'll try again. I mean, how big is the problem with absconding? That would then maybe make it a more urgent, more pressing need to get people tagged up.
Certainly with the Albanians, it was a huge problem. And there are problems with other smaller groups that just want to disappear. In the Vietnamese were another problem that we had that just wanted to disappear. And that's the big problem that we've got. We need to tag people to know where they are and where we can find them. That's the big thing.
Okay.
And we can do it. It's not difficult. If there are enough tags in circulation, then it's relatively easy to do because we just detain them, tag them, and bail them. It's not difficult. It really is not difficult.
Well,
it will be difficult if lawyers get involved, though.
Oh, well, there we go. Well, we saved a little bit of cattiness for the end there, didn't we, Charles? Look, thank you very much. Thank you very much, both of you. I thoroughly enjoyed that. Great stuff. Take care.